Welcome to the Legal Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jolene, and with the Legal Learning Center, I help prospective law students save $300,000 on law school. If you'd like to ensure you're remembering all the steps that go into applying to law school, visit legallearningcenter.com for a free application checklist. Today's guest is Hilary Samuel, founder of Asleep at Last. I think we all know that good sleep is important for good health and for studying. Hilary not only helps people improve their sleep, but she can also help people with insomnia get rid of it forever. So stay tuned if you need help with your sleep.
My name's Hilary Samuel, and my company is Asleep at Last. And I help people get great sleep. So get the rest and relaxation and energy that they're yearning for when they're not getting good sleep. And for people who have insomnia, I help you to get over it forever without medications. And you can lead a happier and healthier life.
I'm so excited to talk about this. This is a problem that I think starts in college, maybe for some in even high school, but we start messing with our sleep patterns and then it just goes downhill from there.
There's a lot of problems with school and what they do with teenagers and young people going to college. And then, of course, when you get to the work world, there's a lot of demands on sleep.
So let's start with the 101. What are some of the health detriments if we're not getting good sleep?
Well, sleep is the foundation for every single thing in your life. So you can think of it, I like to think of it, there's immediate, shorter term and longer term outcomes in terms of what sleep does. So sleep, and it's your physical self and your mental self, and I think of it as also your spiritual self. So it really covers everything. And so you know what it's like if you don't get a good sleep, you don't get a good night's sleep, how you feel physically, usually tired, drained, all of those things. And then your mental acuity is really below par. And that's something that I think your audience might particularly want to pay attention to, because, when you have a lot to do, if you're studying a lot, all of that, you might think, oh, I'm gonna just spend more time studying rather than sleeping. And that actually is not a good choice, because even one night not sleeping or just a few nights not sleeping, it impacts your ability to learn and remember. So you might be trying to cram facts into your brain, but they're not going anywhere. You probably have had that experience of looking at a page and nothing's going in. That's literally your sleep. The sleep before you study and sleep after you study are essential for your memory and learning capacity. So that's the kind of an immediate thing with lack of sleep. And also it's affects your motivation and all kinds of things like that is the immediate effects of lack of sleep. And then if it happens over time, like if you maintain poor sleep habits over time, or you get yourself in a position where you can't sleep, that's insomnia, where you want to sleep but you can't. Over time, what can happen is it'll affect your mental health. Often depression and anxiety is associated with poor sleep. And then there's all kinds of interim things like weight gain. We're more subject to cravings, and sugar and carbohydrates become more attractive, all of that. So there's that physical thing that starts to happen. And then over the long term, sleep is associated with every single chronic disease there is. So whether it's cancer or cardiovascular or any of that, I don't want to worry people and stress them out, but really, it's really all about protecting your sleep, because it's so important for your health and your well-being and your happiness. It's essential. So
I think that's a little scary. But I think it's super relevant for those of us heading into law and, obviously eventually graduating and practicing law, because attorneys are known for having high levels of anxiety and depression. And So if sleep is one factor that can lead to that, then that's something that obviously the earlier we learn this, the better we can maybe try and prevent that as being a contributing factor and hopefully
Absolutely. Yeah.
keep everything down. Yeah.
It really, yeah, sleep really moderates us, keeps us on an even track. So with mental health, actually, depression and sleep go hand in hand, and anxiety and sleep go hand in hand to the extent that um, both of those mental health issues could be caused by lack of sleep. So it's, if you find yourself, sleeping too short a time and your mood's changing, or maybe you don't even realize it because these become our new normals, but people around you are letting you know about that. It's really something to pay attention to, because just improving your sleep, getting the right amount of sleep can improve your moods and get you out of say a depression or anxiety or any of those things. If if it's caught in time, it hasn't gotten to sort of what they call a clinical situation.
Okay. And you kind of touched on this,
Mm-hmm.
but that inconsistent sleep, the pulling
Yeah,
the all-nighters type of thing,
yeah,
and hey, I'll make it up
yeah,
on the weekend or after
yeah, yeah,
finals.
yeah.
So does that have the same impact as consistently not getting enough sleep?
Well, neither are good. It's really good to have consistent sleep, a consistent routine. And so people do think, oh, well, I can make it up. But we don't, that's not really how our body works. It doesn't really make it up. I mean, we feel better for sure if we have not slept and then we get a longer sleep. So we definitely feel better. But if that's a pattern, it's not like, oh, the odd time you do that, once in a blue moon, that's not the end of the world. But if it's a consistent pattern, it's actually undermining your ability to sleep. And sleep really, and your whole body actually depends on some consistency. It helps the whole body to work at its most effective level, to have a routine. So there's that part. And your question, which is worse, I couldn't say it. Maybe it is worse to consistently get poor sleep. And let's say you need 8 and you only get 6 hours. You're really doing yourself severe long-term damage. And some of it you might ignore, and then it'll catch up with you.
Now, have you noticed any difference between uh, poor sleep habits as far as hourly versus the exact hours? So, for example, being a night owl and sleeping from midnight to, let's say, 8 a.m. versus
Mm-hmm.
10 a.m. to 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do have there's a word for this called a chronotype. So we definitely have a sort of rhythm that is best for us, and there's a certain variation in the population. And so some people prefer to go to bed a bit later, and others, like to get up earlier. But we kind of overdo it in our culture. So, some people say, oh yeah, I'm a night owl, I don't need to go to bed before 1 o'clock a.m. Well, a real night owl, is probably actually 11 or, maybe midnight at the latest. But we push it. There's this sort of feeling of, can I get more done with my day, or can I, listen to my favorite XYZ, whatever it might be, or have my downtime, all of those things. So we kind of try to cram our sleep in, and so we overdo it. So especially on the night owl one, I think people who tend to get up early usually, get up when their body tells them to get up, and then go to sleep when their body wants to go to sleep. But I think the night owls are the ones that tend to push it. And there's a lot of things that happen in our culture that only happen at night. So, the bar scene, as an example, I used to live in Montreal and nothing opened until 11 o'clock at night. And so I was part of all of that stuff. And it really pushes you into night owl territory.
Yeah, I've noticed definitely that my studying does improve when I sleep consistently, but
Mm-hmm.
two, when I do follow my body clock. So if I
Mm-hmm.
can avoid those 8 a.m. classes and actually take a 9 or a 10 a.m. class instead, so that I can stay up till, like you said, like midnight,
Mm-hmm.
that's just my happy place.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I study for the bar exam,
Mm-hmm.
everyone takes the 8 a.m. class. They go from 8 to noon and they study the rest of the day. At the very last minute, I withdrew and I took the night class.
Okay,
And
good for
it
you.
was kind of, considered a bad move at the time. It was,
Yeah.
nobody did things online. So it was, and that was kind of almost like you were taking it remote online, like it wasn't in
Mhm.
person. And so yeah, it was considered second rate, but I'm more at my peak between 6 to 10 p.m. instead of
Mhm.
8 to noon.
Mhm.
So, and it ended up working great. I was able to get up and start studying on time without having to leave my house. So it was great.
Yeah. And that sounds like a wise decision. So, if your chronotype isn't the so-called norm, how society's working, if you can adapt your life to fit it, that is the ideal thing. So for you, you're studying in the evening and then getting up at a time that feels right for your body is exactly the right thing to do. And that's the other problem for night owls in our society, is that usually have to get up earlier than they would um, want to or be able to, given the time that they tend to fall asleep. And so then a night owl can be chronically sleep deprived for that reason. Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely a few courthouses that are a long traffic drive
Mm-hmm.
from home. And, when I do have to drive there, it is tough. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah,
for
for
those who
sure.
are suffering from actual insomnia, I know you
Mhm.
said you work with those people. How
Mhm.
long does it take them to get back into a regular, healthy sleeping pattern?
Well, there's a certain amount of variation on that. Everyone's different. Some people can do it fairly quickly, and it's a matter of changing mental habits and or mental patterns, and then behaviors as well. So some people are more able to do that than others, or depending on what kind of mental patterns you have. So with insomnia, basically you've unlearned sleep. Your body knows how to sleep, but it's your mind and body's unlearned it. You've kind of trained it, maybe through these, what we've just discussed, is all these um, impositions from society or different things like that have trained poor sleep. And so the person with insomnia has also gotten to a situation where they want to sleep, but they can't sleep. So they'll go to bed and their brain will not stop. They can't relax. They can't stop their mind from racing, and then they try harder. And that's kind of what we've learned, is to try harder when something doesn't work, to try harder. It's the worst thing to do with sleep because it doesn't respond to that. It's the opposite. We have to learn to surrender. So it kind of depends, and answer your question, how long. I'd say from 6 weeks to 3 months in terms of, what, needs to happen in terms of the mental patterns and the physical habits to get out of that insomnia. And then there's a shift, okay, from insomnia to not having insomnia, being able to sleep through the night, getting better quality sleep. And then there's that after part of actually maintaining these new ways, these new routines, these new mental patterns. So that's kind of another phase to it.
Wow, that's just so much
Mhm.
faster than I would have thought, though. So that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, because it's something that's so severe, so um, it feels like being trapped, in this situation. I myself had insomnia, which is actually why I chose to help people with sleep. So I know exactly what it's like, and I got into that situation when I was a student, and and got to I just wasn't able to sleep at all, and when you're in that place, you're just mystified, like, why, I was able to do this at one time. Everybody else around me seems to be able to do this simple thing, but I can't. Why not? And it does feel like a trap, and it's really helpful to be guided out of the trap and to get into a place where you're able to sleep again.
Yeah, for sure. I know my senior year in high school, I had insomnia, and I think since then I haven't had that because I've just been so overworked that I just crash. So, not that that's any healthier, but I do know what it's like to lay there hour after hour, and I would just, listen to the radio or I had, my tapes back in the day of, the relaxing music.
Yeah,
And
which is good. That's helpful. Yeah.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
would sometimes listen to that tape twice, it would just keep
Hmm.
going around.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's just, yeah, it's a horrible pattern to get into where you're like, what else can I be doing? And
Yeah.
yeah, people do head towards the medication you referred to earlier.
Hmm.
And it becomes a trap as well, where at night we're medicating, whether it's a natural medication or not, it could be,
Hmm. Still
natural
medication.
melatonin,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
still you're putting something in there to help your body. And then in the morning you're putting in the caffeine. So then
Yeah.
your body is in this like forced state at all times.
Yeah.
So do you help
That's
people also
exactly
get away from even some of that natural stuff?
Yeah. So, you know, what I help people with is to really naturally be able to use their mind differently and to be in charge of their behaviors. I feel like that is really empowering when you, and it affects so many different aspects of your life. So I call it mental mastery. So when you have mental mastery and you've applied it to sleep, you can apply it to other things and you can be so much more effective just in your life. So these new behaviors and practices that people learn, have this ripple out effect. In terms of, that sort of self-medication, whether it's a prescription medication or an over-the-counter kind of thing, it's really a crutch. It actually is it's a coping. There's a lot of different coping mechanisms that we use to try and just function and manage through life, but they're not ideal. They're not, even something like melatonin. Really, it's been shown that melatonin can be helpful for jet lag, but it's actually not really doing much for sleep. We really need to activate our natural melatonin, which is, our brain makes it, and it makes it exactly when we need it. So getting into habits that really make that happen is so much more effective than taking a substance. You could be taking it at the wrong time, but anyhow, it actually doesn't really. There might be a placebo effect, where you're taking something so you relax. There's that aspect, but in terms of what melatonin, just sort of singling out one thing, does, it's not really effective if you have insomnia. So, and then the prescription medications are meant for short term, and they're effective over the short term, but over the long term, they stop being effective. Your body gets habituated, and then you have this kind of groggy feeling the day after. So they're not a good solution either.
Yeah, I was reading on your blog about how, yeah, we've kind of messed with our body chemistry and through a lot of different ways. And
Mhm.
the article I was reading on was about, light pollution and, even light pollution in our own homes. And, because I've thought about light pollution as far as the city goes, but not, as far as nature goes, but not as far as my own home and my own, yeah, melatonin production and all that. And so I thought, I think I'm going to try to start, it's more for my kids because they like
Yeah.
lights on in every single room, right? There can be
Hmm.
no shadows in the house at nighttime.
Hmm.
And I'm like, maybe I need to like have softer lights,
That
that we
would be
turn on at
very
night
wise. Yeah, that would
and
be
then
really
move them.
wise.
Yeah,
Yeah, get
move
them
them
used to
slowly.
a new normal. Yeah, because
Hmm.
that is affecting them, and children need more sleep. As you age, you need less sleep. So obviously, infants need lots, and children need, a bit less than an infant, and teenagers need more than an adult. And so you really, it's so essential, for the developing brain as well as, maintaining a healthy brain as an adult. So yeah, for your children, I'd really recommend that, don't mess with their melatonin. So probably, as you probably read about blue light, so I think more and more people are becoming aware of that blue light is a particularly difficult thing for our night time. And so we never encounter blue light in nature. And so the way our body's been um, designed, in a sense, to release the right hormones to tell our bodies what to do. We have two different ways of operating in the day and the night, and our bodies function completely differently accordingly. And so at night, this melatonin, which we're talking about as a supplement, is what triggers the body's nighttime physiology. It's a completely different thing, and it sort of tells the whole body how it should be operating, and sets up all the messages to go to sleep. So that's so important for no matter what age you are, to really have you know low light at night, not have screens, um, to really eliminate that blue light when your melatonin needs to start coming online.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
loving your blog. So I
Mm.
highly recommend everybody go check that out because they're brief, they're to the point, but they have a lot of good points. Everyone has a different topic, obviously. And I just learned a lot just by reading a handful of articles.
Oh,
So
that's great. And thank you for saying so. That's great to
yeah.
hear that. Yeah.
So now law students, not all law schools are the same, but most of them, your grade is 100% based on one final. There's no midterms, there's no papers.
Oh,
And so
that's
you're,
hard.
yeah, you're doing this very fast paced, slow and steady kind of thing, where
Mm-hmm.
you're supposed to be studying from day one for this one day.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's graded on a curve. So even if you do your best, you never know how you're going to end up.
Mm-hmm.
So of course students start, over caffeinating and undersleeping and whatever patterns of good sleep and so forth and nutrition they were doing at the beginning of the semester may start falling apart. So
Mm-hmm.
do you have any suggestions on how to kind of maintain as best you can that sleep and that rhythm through that, chaotic period?
Yeah, it's really hard, especially because, and you're describing a very particular aspect of society where there's a certain pattern that emerges, and there's loads of those things that kind of bias us to in a way where we're really compromising our sleep, and that's really awful, that situation that you're describing. So the first thing is really to know that you're going to do your best with ample sleep, and that sleep is actually creating, it's when your body creates, or your mind creates those memories in learning. It's when your memories go from short-term storage to long-term storage. So if you are not sleeping, um, then you're not getting the benefit of that. So just that knowledge is helpful, to know that you can't really over time compromise your sleep and really do as well. So you may still, people, I'm sure students have done terrible things with their sleep and managed through the exam. I'm sure that's happened, but you're not going to do your best. So if you think of yourself more as like an athlete, how would you train as an athlete? It's the same mentality. And so, if you sort of think of an athlete isn't going to, let's just imagine it's a marathon, it's the similar idea of this exam. An athlete isn't going to just compromise their routines in order to get to this event, this day of a marathon. No, they're going to do everything they can to optimize their body and their mind. So as a law student, you still want to do that. You still want to think of your body and your mind as optimizing it all the time so that you can do your best at the end. And I totally know it's easier said than done, but one of the key things is to maintain a routine and to decide what is your bedtime, what is your wake time, and just make that a ritual in your life that you're not going to mess around with. And how to be most efficient during the wake up time, rather than trying to encroach on your sleep time. Maybe how to study better, there's all these tools to be more efficient with your time when you are awake, rather than try to have more time by not sleeping.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Hilary, if people want to work with you, how does that work? What's the schedule like? Because I know a lot of the people listening are students or they're busy workers.
Mhm.
So, how much time does it take to work with you? How does that whole thing work?
Well, if someone has inside, I do help people that are just not, doing their ideal sleep. They just have poor sleep patterns. But I'll just talk about insomnia at the moment. So if someone has insomnia, meaning that they're trying to sleep, they can't sleep, and this has been going on for a little while, then I start with a consultation, and it's I don't charge for the consultation. It's just to see where they're at, if they're a good candidate for the approach that I use. And so the approach that I use is called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And it's really considered the first line of defense against insomnia, and it's much more efficacious than medications. And I bring in other pieces. I work with energy psychology, and I also come from a functional medicine background. So I look at these other aspects. But the core thing with insomnia is to use cognitive and behavioral therapy. So your mind, cognitive and behavioral. So the therapy part is really just changing those things, looking at what's the root cause of insomnia and changing that thing at root cause. And that's why it's so effective. That's why once you've learned this, it's for life. You've addressed it at root cause. Maybe things in life would change, and you'd find yourself backsliding, but you know what to do. So I start with this consult. Make sure it's the right match, that the person who's booked me is a good match, good candidate for this treatment, and then we work together one-on-one once a week. And I set up as an 8-week program, so that we meet for 50 minutes. There's homework to do in between. We track sleep. We look at what's going on with sleep, with the person's sleep, and each week there's something new to bring in. So over time, there's like a basket of tools that are there, and a shift in habits, mental and physical habits.
That sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, so if they do want to work with you, where can they find you?
Well, my website is called asleepatlast.com. So asleep, ASLEEP, at last.com. So they can find me there. If they click on the Start Here button, that'll take them to where they can book for a consult if they feel they have insomnia, and we can take it from there.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your advice today. I really appreciate your time.
Okay.
Before we get into my top takeaways, a quick word from our sponsor, Juno. If you need to take out student loans, check in with Juno first. Juno can often offer law students 1% to 2% lower interest rates than the federal government, and with no origination fees and oftentimes cash back as well. Visit advisor.legallearningcenter.com/Juno for more information. My top takeaways from this chat with Hilary. Number 1, sleep problems can cause both short-term problems like focus and long-term problems like depression. Number 2, consistent, adequate sleep can help you get the good grades. That kind of goes along with what I just said, but just make sure you're doing it. Number 3, if you have sleep issues, including insomnia, it can be gone forever in just a few months. Now, the full transcript is available at legallearningcenter.com/asleepatlast. The show notes will be there as well. And if you learned something today, if you benefited at all, I would really appreciate if you would go over to iTunes or Spotify and just leave a review. Let others know what you think of the show. It helps us help more people. Thanks.